What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. Today I want to go through some of the questions that were submitted for my giveaway contest for the Westside Discs Queen. The contest is long since over, but I do have two giveaways live right now as of the time of posting this video. One is my 5,000 subscribers giveaway contest. I'm giving away a brand new signed EMAC Truth, autographed by EMAC, and it's got my Disc Golf Nerd stamp on it. It's in Biofusion plastic. Brand new in the plastic, so that's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to leave that open for a little while still and let some more people filter in, but I've already gotten many entries to that, I think, so go check that out if you're interested. Also, I'm giving away a Ballista Pro. It's a burst gold line Ballista Pro from the Next Generation Tour Players Pack. Big thank you to the Next Generation Tour for hooking me up with that disc to give away to you guys, and definitely stay tuned for my review of the Sarek, also from the Players Pack from the Next Gen Tour. So, before we get into the questions, a couple things to tell you guys about on a personal note. I did surpass 5,000 subscribers here on YouTube. It means a lot to me. I'm already jumped up to like 5,075 or so above that, which is great. I was kind of worried I was going to teeter and like right around 5,000 and maybe dip down below it again and then kind of go back up because people subscribe and unsubscribe relatively regularly here. But I'm happy to report that it actually just hit 5,000, and then it immediately jumped up into where it is now, which is like 75, 80 above 5,000. So I should be hovering above 5 from now on, and that would be great. As long as I don't do anything stupid or people don't unsubscribe in mass, I'll be hanging out above 5,000 subs, and I think that's a nice number. It's not anything major in terms of YouTube by any means. I mean, obviously there's people with millions of subscribers on YouTube, but for in the disc golf community and also just for me personally, I think it's awesome. I'm really stoked about it. I super appreciate all of you guys for your support, for subscribing, for liking the videos, for watching the videos alone. Any of that stuff means a lot to me. The comments, the feedback, all that stuff is great. So say thank you. I'm giving away a sweet DGN stamped EMAC Truth with EMAC's signature on there. He signed it right before that got shipped out when I did my last order, so that should be a pretty cool disc for somebody to have out there. And I'm not gonna guarantee it, but there's a possibility the last human hands to touch the disc were Eric McCabe, so that could be pretty cool. You can get that Eric mojo in your bag, or keep it as a collector's item, or whatever you want to do. That's up to you. Bear with me. It's morning. My voice is always a struggle for these podcasts, so hopefully I don't sound too terrible for you guys. I'll try to keep the voice as open as I can. And let's get into some questions. Oh, wait. Also, before we get into the questions, I wanted to tell you guys about this awesome shot that I threw the other day. I hit the best ace of my life, and it was just a really cool moment, so I want to break it down for you guys. So here's what happened. It was I think it was a Sunday or a Saturday or Sunday. We tried to go out to Buxton Woods, which is a private course about an hour outside of Portland. And when we got there, there was a ladies-only tournament going on, so the course was closed. I was kind of bummed. I really wanted to play Buxton. I also had my camera with me. I was trying to film some shots with different discs that I need to get some footage on for review. I have since taken care of that, and you've seen a lot of those reviews already, so that's good. So yeah, a little bit bummed that Buxton was closed. Anthony still hasn't played out there, and it's just a great track, so we were looking forward to it. But anyway, the good thing is that Stubb Stewart State Park is only like 10 minutes away. So we cruised over there, and we got into it. We went into the main course, and it was all in the short position, which was nice. That course, all in longs, is super punishing. It's not easy anyway. The front nine is pretty doable and attackable on a lot of the shots. The back nine gets really long. You got to throw good placement shots and keep it in the middle. And yeah, I'm playing for par on a lot of those longer ones in the back there. Still, just hands down, one of my absolute favorite courses. The forest is gorgeous. It's a really varied layout. There's a lot of different shot shapes. It's very technical but fair. There's open lines on all the shots, even though some of the shots may look like it's just super wooded. There's always a line that you can hit, which I really like. I think it's a well-designed course. It's very challenging. It's beautiful. Tons of elevation. Quiet forest. It's just one of those places that I just truly love and really connects with me and my personal sensibility with golf and being in the woods. And it's just a beautiful place to play around. And So we get into the course. So I go birdie birdie, feeling good. Then I go bogey bogey right after that. So I'm like, all right, great. Now I'm back to even. I think I hit a par, which would put me on hole 5. Yeah, parred that one. Then I went birdie and got up to hole 7. Hole 7 is a downhill shot. It's 320 downhill to the right through the gap, and it's like 40 feet downhill or so, 320 feet from tee to green. And it's a downhill turnover, which is a tough shot. It's really hard to keep a disc flying to the right, also downhill, without it turning over so much that you hit the trees on the right-hand side, or without fading out at the end of the flight due to the fact that you're floating down the hill and the disc naturally wants to finish to the left. So I had actually somewhat recently had some very successful throws, really focusing on keeping the nose down on sharp downhill angles, and it really helped to match the angle flying down the hill. So it's really important to do that, and it's really successful, or it's really gratifying rather, when you are successful with that and you keep it nose down and it flies straight on the plane and gets down to where you're trying to go. It's just it feels really good. It's a fun shot to throw, because a lot of times if you throw it a little too flat, it ends up going out, stalling because of the height, and then just falling out and hyzering out on you. So yeah, I'd almost aced one of my favorite holes out at Rooster Rock, which is a super downhill. It might be like almost as far downhill as it is far away. It's a really interesting, super unique shot, but it's really fun. I just threw a soft magnet on a laser straight down at it and spiked like right next to the basket. And so I was thinking about that. I was also thinking about Terry Miller, disc golf guy. He had kind of reinforced that when I was watching the Throw Down the Mountain coverage. There's several long downhill shots there, and he was really hammering on the nose angle, keeping that nose down, and he was kind of explaining during the commentary like which players had succeeded with that, and and you could see the players fading out that didn't really get the nose down enough. You also, in my experience, want to throw something somewhat more understable to go down the hill. I mean, your mileage may vary on that. I mean, I guess there's different ways to approach things, but I always kind of feel like something that will ride to the right more easily is less likely to fade out on me when I'm trying to throw it down the hill, like a beat-up soft magnet. Has always been a great downhill floater shot disc for me. This particular shot, so like I said, 320, it's down about 50 feet, 40, 50 feet down the hill. I threw my Fury, and I knew that if I threw it hard and pretty flat, it would naturally move to the right. And I knew if I got the nose down, I could get down the hill and hopefully swing out to the right. Everything came together perfectly. It stood up and started just turning smooth and perfect right through the gap all the way. I was kind of trying to get an angle on it through the trees. I should have ran out to the left where I could see it fly into the green, but I had a visual on it for most of the flight. Right at the last second, I turned to look at Andy because I knew it was a successful throw, and I was just stoked on the fact that I knew it was going to be on the green, and I hear way off in the distance, ching! I was just like, did that just go in, dude? It's just ridiculous. I started jumping up and down, yelling and high-fiving, and I was so pumped. I was the most amped I've ever been after a single shot of disc golf, probably in my life. Even my first ace, I don't know if I was as stoked about it as this one. It was just such a ridiculous shot. Really, it's probably my favorite hole out there. I love throwing down the hill like that, and I've never gotten anywhere near the basket. Like, I've gotten down there before for easy pars and stuff, but I've never really birdied it. I've birdied it in the longer position because it's a par 4, and it's pretty doable. As long as you get down to the floor, it's a pretty easy up and down for your bird. So I've gotten it that way, and I've only played it in the short position a handful of times, I think. But it's a tough shot to get all the way down to the green, let alone go straight in. I mean, it hit dead center, full on chains, hit the pole. Like, just based on the positioning of it, I knew it went in perfectly. I didn't actually see it enter the basket, but I believe Andy did. And yeah, it was just sick. Then I got up to the next hole, and I legitimately tried to run that one for ace, and ended up just parking that one while Andy was trying to sneakily draw something stupid on my disc because I wouldn't let him sign my disc. I don't know about you guys. This is a total tangent aside here. I'm not a fan of the whole sign my disc thing with the aces. Like, I don't want anybody writing on my disc. Like, I write my name or whatever, my number, generally on the inside rim, especially for that type of disc. It was an Opto Fury, so it's translucent, and I don't want to see that on the flight plate, so I generally write on the inner rim. If it's an opaque disc, I might write straight on the bottom or something like that, but I don't like other people just writing random stuff on my disc, so I wouldn't let him sign it. He was annoyed because I knew he was going to try to write something stupid. So he snuck it out of my bag and tried to draw a stupid picture on it while I was throwing the next hole. But whatever, it didn't end up being that big of a deal. But yeah, I was just so amped on that. I wanted to break down the whole recap for it. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen the picture of it in the bucket and various other pictures of the shot. It's funny too because I literally had my camcorder in my cart with me for the round because I was trying to film shots of the AVR X3 and something else that I was testing that day. And I even mentioned it like, oh, should we throw this one? Should we film this one just for fun or whatever? And then didn't do it. But it's one of those things where, like, you ever hear that in order to observe something, you're always going to kind of like affect it. So like if I were to film it, I'm not exactly sure it was, I would have still executed the shot so perfectly. Who knows? But it would have been a ridiculous ace to have on film because it was just the best shot I've ever thrown in my life. Anyway, had to ramble that one out to you guys and let you know about that. But yeah, follow me on Instagram if you want to keep up to date with stuff other than the videos, like just my day-to-day stuff and discs as they come in and pictures from the course, that sort of thing. You can find me on there if you want to check it out. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. All right. First question, Derek Jeffries. Are we still recording? Let's make sure. Yeah, we're good. Okay, first question. This one's from Derek Jeffries. Are you a PDGA member and do you play in local tournaments? Give me a second here as I open this up. What division do I play in, and what is my rating? Okay, I can't answer any of those questions because the first one is a negative. I'm not a PDGA member. I probably should be, and it's kind of ridiculous in a way that I'm not. But I just never play PDGA events, and I've never been really one to pay to sign up to be a member of stuff. That's just something I don't know. I've just never been into that. Like, I've never really wanted to sign up for like a fan club or subscription thing, or it's not my thing. I don't know, something about it. I've just never done it. I always spend my money on plastic or other things disc golf related rather than purchasing the membership. I need to rectify that sometime soon though, and just at least have the number and be a part of the pool there, get my dollars in there for the work that the PGA is doing. I may not agree with everything that they do, but I don't think anybody does, and I should still be supporting them at least just by having that basic membership in there. And then if I do want to play more tournaments, which I do, I can then do that without having to pay any of the fees or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, what division? If I were to play, I would probably say intermediate or so. I don't think I'm really advanced level. I guess it kind of depends on the field that would be playing there, but I feel like intermediate's probably a better fit for my skill level overall. If I'm playing to my potential, I could probably hang with people in advanced if I'm like putting really well that day, but I don't throw very far, and I feel like a lot of those guys probably do. So I don't know. I would imagine I would probably play in like intermediate or thereabouts if I were to play PGA events. No rating. Thanks for the question, Derek. Next one, Philip Horvath. Horvath. Sorry. Always a struggle to try to make sure I'm not mispronouncing names. I apologize if I messed any of those up. This one it's funny. This happens all the time. Questions back to back or multiple questions will kind of correlate to each other when I do these Q&As. What is the benefit to getting a PDGA number? Pros and cons. Maybe how to get started in tournament play. Expectations that an amateur should have making that jump, and what is the skill level difference in between those levels in tournaments. Wow. Okay. So, benefits to getting a PDGA membership. You are supporting the PDGA. If you want to play any PDGA events, then you don't have to pay the fee. You can play A tiers as well, which I don't think you can play A tiers or majors unless you are a current member. For like C tiers, I know you can pay the $10 non-membership fee generally, as far as I know at least. And Cons? I mean, there's no real cons to getting a PDGA membership unless you just don't use it. But I feel like if you're going to play events, or if you just like what the sports go, what the PDGA does, it can't hurt to have it. Like I said in the last question, like I should probably just get on it and make that happen, lock in a PDGA number just to have it, and go from there. But yeah, I don't really foresee any cons really to speak of. Maybe how to get started in tournament play. That one is pretty simple. I mean, just go find your local events, maybe talk to some people and see what they're playing out on the course. Look for places like Disc Golf Scene, a lot of Facebook events nowadays for disc golf tournaments as well, and get out there and give it a shot. I would say probably makes the most sense to just start with the lowest. For your first tournament ever, just start in rec or whatever, unless you've been playing for a long time and you're super confident that you're outside of that skill level. It might be a good way to kind of just get in there and start it, but I'm not really the best person to really answer that question. Expectations for an amateur should have making that jump. Expect that people are going to take it a little more seriously than your casual rounds. Definitely expect people are going to expect you to understand the rules and make sure you're playing everything correctly. There are a lot of casual players who don't necessarily understand the actual ruling and how to play, so make sure you're reading through the rule book and you're completely up to date on how all those different things work and all the different situations you might end up in, because you got to make sure you're playing by the rules in tournament play. It's much more important. Also, make sure you're counting your score really well. Double check it, triple check it. Make sure you're writing down the totals and doing everything by the book with that, because it can cost you pretty big. We played a triples event out here in January for the Super Bowl Scramble, or January or February, and the team that would have won open just didn't write down their score, or I forget if they tallied it wrong, or they just didn't write down the total strokes. And they got a penalty for that because it was an incorrect scorecard, and they lost the tournament based on that. So you got to be careful with that. Make sure you're doing that. Skill difference in between those levels, I couldn't begin to tell you that. Obviously, just some of the players as you move up, players are going to throw farther. They're going to play better generally, probably be better inside the circle. And just be more in control of what their discs are doing as you move up through the different skill levels, all the way up to open and the top players in the world. But as far as anything more specific than that, I don't really have anything for you there. Sorry. Sam Grant says, "What is the main difference between a soft putter, a super soft putter, and a medium to hard putter?" I actually have a video that I'm going to defer you to. Let me go look up what I have it named right now, because I'm not exactly sure. Okay, so it's called Disc Golf Tips, Choosing a Putter Plastic by Disc Golf Nerd. You can find that video from a few months ago. I break down a lot of the different considerations you should think about when you're trying to choose what plastic to pick for your putter, but I'll break down a few of them quickly here as well. So soft and super soft putters are going to be grippier. They're generally going to catch the ground a little better and be less likely to roll or skip. They're also generally going to grab the chains a little better. For medium to hard putters, they have a firmer feel in the hand. A lot of this breaks down to just straight up personal preference, what you like, what feels good in your hand. Also, though, with medium to hard putters, as most professional players will use, they come out of the hand a little bit more smoothly and a little bit more consistently. With a really soft putter, like a soft or super soft, occasionally it'll kind of flop out of your hand, or it'll kind of get caught on your fingers, or it'll wobble a little bit more as you release it because it doesn't have as much structural integrity, and it doesn't kind of release out of your hand as smoothly as a harder putter. A lot of people actually enjoy slicker putters that don't have as much grip because they feel like it's a smoother transition out of the hand and towards the basket. So I would definitely check out that video if you want more details about that, because that's literally exactly what that video is about, is the differences between those putters and the different plastic types. And also I will show you a lot of those different plastic types next to each other to give you an idea of just how different they are, and yeah, break down several considerations that you want to think about. Melody Sanford asks, "Does my wife play with me?" No, but we do go out, and very often we'll cruise out to Rooster Rock or wherever we go, and she'll hang out and do her thing, read a book, or just kind of chill, and put out a blanket and just kind of be and enjoy the outside and stuff. But she's not really into athletic endeavors at all. Really, it's not her thing. She's much more music, books, that sort of thing. So we definitely go out to the disc golf course together quite often, but she doesn't really play. I mean, I don't think she's ever even really tried. Maybe one time she threw a couple of shots at some point, but I kind of doubt it, in fact. She was there for my first round ever, though, at Dabney State Park. She may have thrown a shot there. I can't remember. That was a long time ago. But yeah, she doesn't actually play the game, though. Stephen Roberts asks, when should a beginner start throwing higher speed discs? Great question. So it's going to be personal, based on just kind of your progression. And it's not really a universal thing where you can say, when you do this, then you can move on. It's kind of a feel thing. If you feel like you're throwing mid-ranges and putters and neutral, slower, like kind of neutral, understable drivers, and you're in good control of those discs, you're getting good distance, and you feel like you understand what you're doing with your form, then you can for sure start trying to move on to higher speed discs. I think the problem comes in is when you go straight to those. That's when it really causes the most issues, and it'll cause you to stunt your form, or it just won't, flat out won't work very well for you. It could be very discouraging. I recommend this all the time on my channel, is to stay with putters and neutral mid-ranges for several of your first rounds until you feel like you have the throwing motion down and you've kind of committed it to muscle memory and you're in control of what those discs are doing. Then you can kind of start to step it up to drivers and then onto high-speed drivers. But it's kind of a personal experience, and it's going to be different for everybody. If you're just a naturally super athletic person, you might be able to throw distance drivers very quickly. After just a few weeks, few months of playing, you might be ready to step it up and start trying them. And really, if you just are looking for a gauge of how to know if you're ready for a distance driver, if you can throw it and get a good flight out of it, you're ready to rock. That's all there is to it. If you throw it and it just dives out left when it's supposed to be a straight flying distance driver, you know you're not throwing it fast enough to maximize its potential. If you like the flight of it anyway, and it's functional for you on the course, of course you can throw that. And I mean, even though I don't recommend high-speed discs for beginners, if you're a relatively new player, you end up with a high-speed disc that you really like for like a strong hyzer or something like that, there's nothing wrong with that per se. You're just not really getting the most out of it. And when you don't know how to throw a neutral mid-range without kind of flipping it over or something along those lines, because you start with a distance driver and you have to yank it over on anhyzer to get distance and try to throw flex shots because you can't just throw it flat because you don't have enough arm speed, that's when the problems start to come in. So really, it's an individual thing, but if you throw it and it's flying well and you like the flight of it, then keep rocking it and see how it goes. Tommy T, true test, biostability versus fusion. So biofusion versus fusion, I feel like they're pretty similar. I feel like the biofusion breaks in faster, but I'm not super experienced with either of those plastics, to be perfectly honest. I tend to throw Opto Lucid plastic much more than I throw Fusion, Gold Line, Bio, or recycled plastic. I do have a recycled Mercy coming to me soon to test from my own bag, so I'll see how that goes. I really like the feel of the Biofusion plastic. The Fusion plastic is great as well. I've thrown some of it for sure. I feel like in general, Opto and Lucid are a little bit more stable, stay a little bit more stable for longer. Sometimes the Bio starts off quite stable, but will break in a little bit faster. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say between Bio and regular Fusion, but this is hilarious again. The next question by Jeremy Gallagher, what do you like more, Fusion or Biofusion? Isn't that weird? I told you guys that's weird. That happens all the time. So what do I like more, Fusion or Biofusion? I would have to say Bio. It's not really much of a difference for me. I don't have any of either in my bag. I have a Gold Line X compass in my bag. I believe it's the X Blend compass. The Gold Line Burst bricky 2-time compasses that came out. My buddy Anthony bought me one of those for Christmas. The thing is fantastic. I love it. It's more stable than my other one, so it's a beautiful, like, straight to hyzer finish, smooth, short, kind of mid-range hyzer. Just a beautiful disc. Flies so nice. It's got a very consistent little fade at the end of it, at the end of the flight, and I love that thing. I do have a Biofusion Criminal, but it's not currently in the bag. It's I was going to try to break it in, but I just don't throw overstable fairways enough to really get it there, so I took it out, and I just have the Opto in there for the occasional times that I need to throw a Criminal. It's very rare, to be honest, but I think they're both pretty interchangeable. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I would say Biofusion by a hair. It's not really much of a difference, to be perfectly honest. Terry Anderson, what's my most, it just says most favorite plastic of any brand. Opto plastic, Opto or Lucid for sure. I also really, really like the Big Z plastic from Discraft. That stuff is fantastic. And the Z plastic in general from Discraft is solid. It's got a good feel. It's durable, super durable, and just maintains flight for a really long period of time. But overall, there's more Opto and Lucid plastic in my bag than any other plastic. I really like it. Super consistent. It's very durable. Holds on to flights for a really long time, and I just dig it. Let's see, where are we? This one just says, Andy, what's your least favorite disc and why? What are the most understable, overstable, and neutral discs you have thrown? Okay, least favorite disc and why. This one's tough, you know, because I feel like it's kind of unfair to just bash a disc because it doesn't work for me. So I'm gonna pull out one that I've had this question before, and I'm gonna give you the same answer. It was a defunct company called UB Discs, I believe. They had this disc called a Procule. It was like a giant pop top driver, and it just I didn't like the feel of it, and the flight was terrible. It would go straight for a little while and then just plummet out of the air. It was just a really goofy disc, and I really didn't connect with it at all. I believe I was trying to review it, and I ended up since the company was out of production, and I just really didn't connect with the disc, that I didn't even end up reviewing it, which will happen. People have asked me what's my least favorite or the worst disc I've ever reviewed. If I'm like I'm really not enjoying the disc to that level, I just won't review it. Pure and simple. Yeah, I've done that a few times in the past where I felt like the disc was either not representative, like it was a lemon or something, it was unusually over or understable or something like that, and not representative of the disc overall. I didn't want to kind of misrepresent it by posting a review on a disc that doesn't really match the others, which does happen. Sometimes you just get a really beefy disc or a really flippy version of a disc. It's just one of those things. But yeah, I would say the Procule is probably my least favorite disc I've tested. I also really don't connect with the high-speed drivers from MVP and Axiom, like the really fast ones. I just don't dig them. I can't throw them. I don't like the feel. They're really sharp. The rims are too wide, and I really don't like the flights I get out of them for my arm speed. They just don't connect with my game at all. It's weird too, because I really like a lot of the MVP and Axiom stuff, especially the putters, the mid ranges, even all the way up to like the Inertia was my favorite disc for a while. They make a ton of great stuff. I think they literally have some of the best mids and putters on the market. Like, just fantastic. The Axis, like an Eclipse Axis, is a phenomenal mid range. And the Matrix is a really great flyer. The Proxy and the Envy are both fantastic. The Volt is tremendous. They've got some great discs. I really don't like their high speeds. What are the most understable and overstable and neutral discs you have thrown? Okay. The most understable disc I've ever thrown, I'm not going to count like something that's just beat to hell, you know, like obviously I've thrown discs that were just like an old DX Leopard or something like that was super beat up that I found somewhere and it was just crazy understable. Let's go with the most understable, like off the shelf new disc. That's tough to say. It's probably either the DGA Sail or what was the other one? Oh, the Mamba. I tested a like 150 class Champion Mamba that was extremely understable, very easy to get it to flip, and and roll and stuff. It was pretty difficult to control. I would say though, I'm quite good at throwing understable plastic, so I can get a disc to fly even if it's really understable. For the most part, I can kind of put it on a steep hyzer and scale it back a little bit and still get a decent flight out of it. It's not ideal, but I'm capable of doing that. Some people are not. Like, you just can't even throw it, it just flips over immediately. I can kind of make it work with a really understable disc when I need to, but those two stand out as really understable. There's something else that just popped into my head, but I lost it now. Diamonds, Latitude diamonds are super flippy. Also, the Deputy, when you try to throw the Deputy off the tee, the Trilogy Challenge one that I tested, that thing's super understable. Like, it just really wants to move right. And yeah, it flips really hard, and it'll late turn on you. So that's kind of nice for certain shots where you've seen Paige throwing those a lot. She can throw it on hyzer, it'll flip up and then late turn and fight to the right, soft at the end of the flight, which is pretty nice. Overstable, man, that's tough. What would be the most overstable disc I've thrown? The Discraft Machete, super overstable. That thing's a beast. The Frostline Triple X is a really overstable disc, especially since it's not very fast. That thing is tremendously overstable. I have not tested like a Stiletto or anything like that. That's hard to say. I'm not exactly sure what the most overstable disc. What was that? The Legacy Fighter. That's a beefy disc for sure. It's probably, though, the Enforcer. I had, for a short period of time, I had a gold line, like the EMAC Mustache Enforcer. The first runs of those, it was like a pink one. It was like 168 or something like that. And that thing was just bananas overstable. I couldn't throw it at all. I mean, I almost couldn't get a flight out of it in any way. It just started bombing out to the left instantly upon leaving my hand. So I hear that the new Lucid X Enforcers and Triple X are both like stupid overstable. So if you're looking for like a crazy overstable disc, those could be good. And Eagle McMahon, who I would have to trust as one of the biggest arms ever, claims that the Metal Flake Max from Innova is the most overstable disc you can find. But I also have tested a Star Destroyer that my buddy got me that stands out as one of the most overstable discs I've ever thrown. It's got like it's like a weird destroyer. It's got like a Vulcan top or something like that. Like, it's a really strange flat top bottom stamp Star Destroyer, and that thing is crazy overstable. The most neutral disc I've ever thrown is probably the Latitude 64 Compass. In terms of just having it hold different release angles really well and showing you what you're doing with your form, the Compass is fantastic. You can throw it flat and straight and have it just fly flat and straight all the way, start to finish. It holds a turnover super well. You can throw it up on a hyzer, it'll hold that. It's just a super neutral, tremendous disc. I really like the Compass. I have one broken in opto that I use for kind of most of my turnovers and some straight shots, although the Gobi is super straight. It's not as neutral because it doesn't actually hold a turn as well, I would say. It does, but it's so straight flying that it doesn't really want to turn hard on you unless you really yank it over. The Compass, though, is probably the most neutral and kind of point and shoot disc that I can think of that I've tested. Damn, I went long on that one. Let's move on. Zach Rebholes, have you been able to throw the new Innova X-Mold discs? I'd like to see a vid comparing the Rock 3, Rock X3, AVR 3, AVR X3. So I have tested all of those discs, and I have reviews on all of those discs. Right? For sure. Yeah, I got a Rock 3, Rock X3, and then, yeah, I've definitely reviewed all those discs. I don't have all of them to do a video comparison throwing them, but I have been able to throw them. The AVR and Rock X, the AVR X3 and the Rock X3 are really not anything to do with rocks or AVRs, in my opinion. The AVR X3 is extremely similar to something like a Zone. It's flat top, small diameter. It looks absolutely nothing like an AVR. It just kind of piggybacks off the name. And the Rock X3 is the same deal. It's not really like a rock shape at all. It looks remarkably similar to a Buzz OS. Great disc, though. I like the Rock X3 quite a bit, and I think the AVR X3 is going to be super popular for those Innova players. But yeah, I don't have those anymore in the queue that I could do a comparison video. But if nothing else, you could go reference all my 4 reviews on those to see any differences. The Rock 3 review is quite old, so keep that in mind when you watch it. That's been out for a while, but I still feel like it's somewhat representative of the type. Seth Heasley asks, I still haven't really added a roller to my game. I used to use an MVP signal for the occasional roller, the occasional one, but I gave it to my son. Do you think it's a good idea to have a dedicated roller disc or just use one of your more understable discs when the need arises? Good question. The signal actually is another exceedingly understable disc, going back to the question earlier. Let's see. So, do you think it's good to have a dedicated roller disc or just throw something that you already have that's flippy? I would say just it's good to have a really understable disc in your bag somewhere for certain shots. I mean, like, I throw that Fury a ton for anything moving left to right, and it rolls really well as well. So it's super versatile in that respect. I feel like it's good to have something that's understable enough to roll and hold a turnover very easily in your bag somewhere. It can't hurt. And I feel like a lot of pros have discs that they only really throw for rollers, but I think for more amateur players, you can get a lot of use out of a really flippy disc, where most pros, they can't really throw regular shots with their roller disc because it turns a lot. For me, I can really control the Opto Fury, and it's a great roller and a really great left to right kind of hyzer flip to turnover, strong turnover shots, hyzer flip to flat. It's just a really effective disc. So I would say just try to have something in your bag that's understable for those utility shots and left to rights and rollers and turnovers and all that kind of stuff, and use one for all of that. Unless you really don't like the turnover flight you're getting out of the disc, but you really like the way it rolls, something about the design of the rim or something rolls well for your courses and the ground conditions there. I mean, there's definitely some variables there, but I would say for most average players, I don't think you really need to have a dedicated roller. I think you could just have a nice flippy disc that you know you can get down on that angle. We're about 40 minutes in. Let's do a couple more. Chris Turner asks, what is the difference in flight characteristics between prime and classic plastics for putting? Okay, those are dynamic discs, plastic types if you're curious. Prime is basically their baseline, same as retro plastic for latitude. The prime plastic, in drivers especially, starts out quite overstable. I would imagine for putters, it's relatively similar to a classic hard in feel and in flight. I don't think there's a huge difference. The classic hard may be a touch more stable, but I'm really not sure. I haven't really tested enough back-to-back with those different plastic types to really say. But I would say that usually the soft and the super soft are the most stable when they're brand new. The classic soft, classic super soft are pretty stable in comparison. So I would say maybe start with a blend and kind of go from there. The prime plastic is fantastic for putting as well. Works out fine. Very similar in feel, and from what I understand and what I've experienced in flight, to the classic hard plastic. Let's move on. Scott Roden says, what do you like to throw into a strong headwind? What kind of release? I'm not a very good wind player by any means, so I wouldn't. I would take what I have to say about this with a grain of salt. I'm not like one of these guys from the Midwest or something where I deal with a ton of wind, Kansas or any of those type of areas. Is that even the Midwest? I don't even know. I don't know geography. Nobody got time for that. I don't deal with a lot of winds, like, you know, Oklahoma type winds. I don't handle that much. It happens. I have played in those conditions, but it's pretty rare. I don't enjoy it very much. So if it's like super windy, a lot of times I won't go out straight up. And honestly, I will see some of those videos where somebody's trying to make like a 5-foot putt and it blows like 40 feet behind them. I'm just like, I literally would, like, there's no way I would even play that. Like, there's no point. I've seen no point to that whatsoever. If you try to throw a putt and the wind is so strong that it picks your disc up out of the chains and throws it 40 feet behind the basket. What are you doing out there? Isn't it? That's dangerous. You just get hit with a piece of flying shrapnel off of a tree or something like that. Like, there's just no reason to play in winds like that. It makes no sense. Every time I see that, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Go home. Come back the next day. I mean, it's just too much. I would not want to do that. Like the infamous wind putt from GBO several years ago. I'm not into that at all. Into a strong headwind, I would probably throw my Gladiator. The disc I trust the most in the wind, I feel really confident in, is the Opto Anchor. It's a mid-range, but I know that it won't flip on me and get super squirrely, so I'll throw that nice and flat and smooth into the wind, and it'll stand up and fly pretty straight overall and still do a pretty good job. So I will usually throw that into the wind just because I feel pretty confident in it. As far as Headwind Drivers, right now I have the Deco Die Gladiator that I've been using, but I haven't really had a ton of headwinds to test it in. And also I just got the Goldline, or the Opto X Trespass, the new EMAC Trespass, the Tour Series one. And that thing, based on initial testing, is extremely overstable in comparison to other Trespasses. That will almost certainly become my new headwind driver. But overall, I try to throw pretty flat. I don't try to kill it. Don't try to throw too hard into the wind. Just throw a nice, smooth shot, because the wind kind of pushing on the disc, from what I understand, kind of like amplifies the effect, so it's like it's flying faster, which is why discs will turn over. I think I have the physics correct on that. I could be wrong, but yeah, you don't want to really try to rip it into the wind. You can just throw a nice smooth shot and let it do the work. But yeah, I'm not very good in the wind by any means, so don't go by me. But the Opto Anchor is for sure the disc I trust the most in the wind, and if I'm in a ton of doubt as to whether or not I can get something to fly, I will throw that disc because it hasn't failed me yet. Let's see where we're at in terms of time here. Yeah, we're about done. We're going to do a couple more here. There's one in particular I'm going to try to get down to real quick. What's your favorite course you've ever played? This is a hard one. I would have to say Mile and MacGyver State Park out here in Oregon is my favorite course overall. It's hard not to say that. It's such a great track and so well loved and revered by all players that have played it. I mean, the amount of times that I hear a top pro talk about Milo is pretty impressive, and I think it's testament to how amazing that course and that property and the layout and everything is. Mile and MacGyver in Estacada, Oregon, probably my favorite course I've ever played. I'm very, very fond of Stubb Stewart State Park, like we talked about earlier. I truly love that track. Buxton Woods is amazing. A great course for sure. There's a lot. I really like Canyon out at Horning's Hideout. That's one of my favorite tracks to play. And there's a bunch of really good ones out there. I have a top 10 favorite courses podcast from a while ago if you're interested in any more specifics. That was from Adam Brown. Moving on to Stephen Judd. What advice do you have for someone who bags solely Innova who's looking to diversify? This is an interesting one. So there's a couple of different ways you can go about this from my perspective. You could either look for equivalent discs. So if you're a T-Bird thrower, you might want to try an Opto Explorer. It's a very similar disc, or the new Maverick from DD is very similar to like a Leopard 3 type flight and feel in the hand. So you might want to try something like that, where you're trying to look for something that's similar to something you already throw and get a feel for the difference in the plastics and stuff like that. Or just go get anything else you're interested in, whether it's Discraft or some of the MVP stuff. Ask around a little bit. Also, can't hurt if you play like leagues or you have buddies that you play with that throw other stuff. Just hit them up and be like, hey, what are you guys carrying? Fish through their bag, see if you can try a couple things. Like, I know for me personally, I flat out tell people to try stuff all the time. Like, here, throw this, see what you think. I did that the other day. I met a gentleman named Ken. We met up for a round at Rooster Rock, and I made him throw my Gobi just out of curiosity, see how it flies for him, just to get a feel for it, because I really love that disc. So something like that. Maybe you have some friends that throw some other stuff. Ask them what some of their favorite discs are from companies other than Innova or whatever your principal company is to start out, whoever might be hearing this. And yeah, try it out, see what you think, and kind of go from there. Or like I said, could be a good option to try to find something that you're already throwing, and then look for something that's relatively equivalent and see if you like the feel different or if the flight's a little better or whatever the case may be. But that that would probably be a good way to get a feel for the different plastic types from other companies and stuff. Is to do something along those lines. Next one from Ryan Chapman. How do you feel about Gateway plastics? I don't have a ton of experience with Gateway, to be perfectly honest. I feel like their putters are somewhat confusing. There's so many different plastic blends for something like a Wizard that I think it gets kind of overwhelming. It's great. I mean, there's definitely ways to figure out which ones you like, but it seems like one of those things you have to do some research and find the good Wizards. I hear that all the time, like, oh, I'm looking for the good Wizards. Not exactly sure what that means, but I guess everybody has different distinctions on what that means as well. And there's a lot of different options out there, so you're covered, depending on your personal preference. I think that the naming scheme is somewhat misleading in my experience. Just to be perfectly honest, I've noticed, like, back in the day, I had a soft magnet, and then I would try like a soft Wizard. Was nowhere near as soft as a soft magnet. Even like the super soft Wizard was nowhere near as soft as a regular soft magnet. So I think that's a little bit tricky. And you kind of have to work your way through it to figure out what you like. But there's no doubt about it that Gateway makes good stuff. Their putters are very well revered alone, and they for sure have good drivers and stuff as well. I haven't tested a ton of it for whatever reason. Gateway's never really been on my radar. I've tested some of it. There's some reviews out there for Gateway plastic here on my channel, but not as much as other companies, just kind of based on my own personal preference. For a while there, I was doing all reviews of discs that I either bought for myself to test from my own bag, and then I also posted a review, or I bought specifically for a review, and Gateway is just not so much on my radar. But yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with it, to be perfectly honest. I have only owned a handful of Gateway discs in the past. So let's end on this one. This one's from Joshua Ruzi. Okay, it's a little bit longer question, but let's get into it. Hello, DGN. So I currently carry a mixed bag with 22 discs, 16 different molds. Is that just too many molds, or since it works well for me, should I just stick with what works? Thank you, from Josh. Okay. 22 discs, 16 different molds. I would say that's probably too many molds. If it's working, it's working, and there's not really any arguing with that. If you feel like you're really confident in your bag and everything's working out fine, there's really no problem with that. I think that's totally fine, like if it's working, it's working, and there's not really a point to like just changing it for the sake of changing it. But here are some things you might want to consider in terms of how many molds you might want to have in your bag. So if you have discs that are overlapping and they're different molds and you're not exactly sure which one to throw on certain shots, that can cause problems where you're unsure. If you have less molds, it's quite easy, or it's much more simple to decide which disc you want to throw in a given situation. Also, when you kind of pare down your molds and you layer them, so you have a nice flippy one that's beat in, or a different plastic, then you have a straight one, and then you have a pretty overstable, relatively overstable version of that same disc. They're going to have the exact same feel in the hand, and that's kind of nice, so it lends consistency. I think the most of the reason why players layer the discs in their bag is because they find the ones that really work for them, and then they want to stick with that disc. And I think it's a very intelligent way of going about it. You're not going to see hardly any professional players that have 16 different molds of discs in their bag. There probably are, and I'm sure somebody could prove me wrong and find somebody who's got a ton of different molds. But for the most part, professional players will find those discs that work well for them, and they will layer those discs to increase consistency in terms of the feel in the hand, and also just make it far simpler to decide which disc to throw. If you wanted to try to get away from having too many molds, or I guess too many is a kind of a relative term, but if you want to try to pare down the amount of molds that you have, I would say either just look for discs that you can find. You can find a nice broken in version of a disc out there on the used market, and then have a brand new fresh one, or just have one that you've already worked in, get a nice fresh one as well. And then there's also, usually plastic types will vary in terms of their flight characteristics. As I said earlier, I kind of wanted to get the Lucid X Trespass because I've heard that the plastic type is much more overstable. Other than me just wanting to support Eric McCabe, who's been a pro that I've looked up to for a long time, I heard that that plastic type is more overstable, and the thought process was, well, if it's like considerably more overstable than my standard Lucids, I might be able to get rid of the Gladiator and just stick with Trespasses. And that's kind of the thinking that I'm going with there. I could have another different type of understable mid-range, but instead I throw a nice broken in opto compass for my turnovers. But then I also have the one Goldline one that I spoke about earlier, that's more overstable, has more fade. I know it won't turn as much at all. It'll go straight and have fade. Now I'm throwing the same disc with the same feel in the hand, and getting two different flights out of those two discs, like pretty considerably different flights. And I think that's a more consistent way to do it overall. One thing I will say about having multiple molds to cover you in those situations is that when you have a disc that's particularly broken in, sometimes that's really hard to replace. So I understand the thought process to say, hey, maybe I want all discs that are different because I want them to fly the way they fly brand new. That's how I like this particular disc. And then if I lose it, I throw another one in there and I'm ready to rock. I totally understand that thought process. And it is somewhat tricky to keep your kind of nice broken in disc in your bag for a long period of time. And if you lose it, it can be tricky. But it's one of the things you can do for that is kind of work in a few, like have a couple different ones and throw them both, throw practice shots with them and stuff, and try to break them into to similar levels. And then you have that backup there that you can kind of put that aside and kind of move on. Or like I said, the used market is great for that. I've searched that out myself. Like, you can find them cheaper generally when they're beat up too, because they're not in great condition. So if you're looking around, be like, hey, I'm looking for a nicely broken in blank, whatever the disc is, it should be somewhat doable to find one like that and be able to kind of go from there. But that's kind of my thoughts on that. Ultimately, if it's working, it's working, and there's not really any arguing with that, but it might be a more consistent, more pro-style setup for you overall to try to pare down the amount of molds in your bag. That's all I'm going to tackle for today. Thanks for your questions, everybody. I'm going to leave off right here. I still have many more. I'm pretty rambly today, so I got through 17, and I have 90 overall, so there'll be a few more of these episodes coming up soon. I appreciate your support. Thanks for listening. Much love to everybody out there. Have a good day. I'll check you later. Cheers.